I got involved with Transformers the movie as a result of doing Rocky IV in 1985. The producers came to me and said, we really liked the score that you did for Rocky IV and thought musically that the style could be applied to our movie. So I wrote an audition piece called Legacy, and this piece was about 6 minutes long, and it had the good guys theme, the bad guys theme, a chase scene, a victory scene, and presented it to the director and the producers of the film, and they loved it. Hired me for the movie. Ended up not using any of that music in the film, but it did get me the job in the first place. As far as collaboration goes, the producers kind of left me alone on this and gave me free rein, which I really like. I had the freedom to do what I felt was best. Certainly they gave me storyboards in the first place to write to, which was very difficult. I had never written to storyboards before. In previous experience I had just dealt with video. So writing to little boards that had cartoons on them was a little difficult for me, but once I got the hang of it and got a feel, I could really get a feel for what they were looking for. I have to say they gave me a lot of freedom, and there wasn't a lot of interaction after the initial meeting or two. Interestingly enough, when I saw the movie, I did a convention, a Transformers convention in July of this year in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And my friend Glenn Hallett is the head of a company called 3H Enterprises. Actually, he's partners with two other people in 3H Enterprises. And at this convention, for the first time since the movie's release in 1986, they had rented a movie theater, a really nice movie theater in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and showed the movie for the first time on the big screen. And what was interesting is I got a chance to hear my music in that context, and there are some things that I probably would have changed if I had seen it on video in the first place rather than storyboards. But the nice thing is the fans that were watching the movie were, obviously unaffected by any of the feelings that I would have about my music. They thought it was great, and that's all that really matters. I've gotten excellent responses about my music to the film, so the storyboards worked out fine. As far as songs in the Transformers movie and on the soundtrack, I'm only involved in one song. It's called Dare. It was co-written by my friend Scott Shelley, and it was performed by Stan Bush, who was a Scotty Brothers artist at the time. And it was used, a song of Stan's called The Touch was used, and I would say our song Dare was used equally as kind of a theme song to the movie. When I saw Boogie Nights, and I called Stan up as soon as I got home, I said, "Did you realize your song was in that movie?" And he said, "I really didn't know." And I don't think he even got credit for it, but it was funny how they used it. It was really interesting to hear that song in that context. When I write for a film, my first step is to sit down with the director and look at any rough cuts that he might have of scenes that are finished or that are in a position to be looked at. And he and I will discuss, or she and I will discuss, what they think would be a direction to go in musically, and also we'll discuss where we think music should be and where it should lay out, because sometimes that's just as important. The next step is for me to come into my studio here and play the movie, sit at a piano, sit at one of these keyboards here, and whatever feeling that scene evokes to me, I will just start improvising, and I'll come up with maybe 2 or 3 different ideas for each scene. I'll tape these ideas on audio tape or now onto hard disk recording, and after I come up with a lot of sketches, I will call the director in and I'll say, "Is this the right direction that you hear for the scene?" And we go back and forth a couple of times. If I'm lucky, we don't go back and forth, and they say it's great, go with that. And then I start orchestrating it. Obviously, depending on the movie, the orchestration will be different. Sometimes it's for synthesizers and rock band, like it was for Transformers. Other times it'll be for orchestra. Sometimes it'll be a combination of both, like in the instance of Rocky IV. I had both orchestra and rock band. The biggest challenge actually wasn't music. It was getting all the music done in time, because it was wall to wall. It was, I think, something like 75 minutes of instrumental music. and that doesn't include the songs, you know, with vocals. So the challenge for me was I had to move very quickly. I had to write the music quickly. I had to record it quickly. Sometimes that produces excellent results. I enjoy being under the gun like that, and I have to say, in this case with Transformers, I ended up with a score that I feel very proud of. So being pushed to do it in such a short time frame was a good thing in this case. But normally you have a lot more time and a lot less music in a film. But the fact that it's animated, you know, obviously lent itself to wall-to-wall music. Movie scores today tend to sound similar to me in the sense that there's some great composers out there, but there's some decisions that are made to continuously use orchestras. And it's a great thing. Orchestra, I love orchestra, and I'm not saying that synthesizers take the place of an orchestra by any means. But I would like to hear more synthesizer scores, and I'd like to hear less of the generic orchestra scores that they have. The film Matrix is a good example. I thought the music was an excellent hybrid of techno from today, coupled with orchestral that gives a sense of history, you know. So I'd like to see synthesizers start being used a little bit more again. Certainly Giorgio Moroder was one of the first guys on the music scene for films having to do with synthesizers. I'm more heavily influenced by some of the progressive rock keyboard artists from the 70s, specifically Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. In fact, I sent this score to Keith and with a letter saying how big of an inspiration he was, and he was kind enough to call me back and say he was really touched by that, and he could certainly hear the influence, but he didn't feel that I was stealing in any way from him. He thought I did a very classy job of incorporating his style into my style of writing. So while I can say I respect Giorgio Moroder and those type of synthesizer composers from the 80s, Keith Emerson and the progressive rock genre were more of an influence for me. I found out about Transformers conventions from my friend that I mentioned earlier, Glenn Howlett. He asked me to put together a band and come and perform some of the score, and also Stan Bush was invited to sing. So we ended up performing about an hour-and-a-half concert during this convention, and Glenn did it up really nice. You know, he hired a great sound and light company for us, paid us all very generously for our time to prepare for the concert, because it took a while. I mean, this wasn't a band that was together ready to play this material. I had to build it from the ground up, and it was a lot of preparation. My point is, when we got to this convention, I was amazed at the amount of people that came up to me and thanked me for my contribution to this movie. And I've done, this year was my third appearance at a BotCon convention. And each year, the numbers grow. And the fans are so supportive of me, and so kind to me, and so genuine in their interests of my music for this film, and as a result, my music in other projects that might have grown out of Transformers. So the one thing I'd like to say to these fans is thank you so much, and I say this at every convention, for keeping this project alive. When I first did the movie, I was just so concentrated on getting it done, and I was really flying by the seat of my pants. To be honest, I didn't have a sense, because things were moving so quickly, at how proud I would eventually be of the music. You know, you're so into the details and the technical end of things that sometimes you don't pay attention to what you're doing musically. And I don't mean to say that I don't take great pride or great care when I'm writing music. But things go so fast and they go by you that it takes months after the film comes out till you realize, hey, I did something pretty neat. But the movie came and went so quickly the first time around that it really didn't have much of an effect on my career at the time. What I'm really thankful for is the effect that it's having now, because I get emails from all around the world from people saying how much they love this score. And you know, where can they get it, and you know, when is it going to be put out on a mass production level? And a lot of people have shown a great deal of interest. So it's changed, it's affected my career in a really nice way. And again, as a left field, when Glenn called me to do the convention, it was like a Transformers convention. I can't believe that there's a convention for this movie. He says, "Oh, you wouldn't believe it." So when I went there and saw the genuine interest from the fans, and I go every year and I see this interest, it has a great effect on my career. And of course, it's an ego booster. And with the business the way it is, up and down so much, sometimes those ego boosters come at a good time. And that's happened with this film.